Our SEC Week 2 winners and losers of the weekend is Billy Napier already on the hot seat, and who's making the case for best quarterback in the SEC? Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's happening, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along on today's show. We'll get to our winners and losers of Week 2 across the conference. I'm Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use our code LOCKEDONCollege, get $20 off your first purchase. All right, the SEC had a very successful weekend, albeit Florida losing to USF and Kentucky taking a loss because they lost to Ole Miss. They were the lone first SEC versus SEC matchup, but the SEC was 4-0 on Saturday versus non-conference group of 4 competition, including one top 10 and one top 15 victory. So let's get to our winners of the weekend. And we start over at Oklahoma as John Mateer, the Washington State transfer, who has been excellent so far at Oklahoma this week, leading the Sooners to a 24-13 home win over number 15 Michigan. It was a prime time, national audience. Everybody saw it as Mateer threw for 270 yards and a touchdown, but also showed off his legs with 74 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns as well. Mateer has been the offense for the Sooners, really elevated this team when you consider how putrid their offense was a year ago. Look, John Mateer right now, he is among the favorites. If you want to, look at Heisman odds and all that, certainly he is a guy that has elevated himself, and look at what he's done for this offense at Oklahoma so far. Next up for them, an odd road trip to Temple this weekend before they come home to host Auburn in their SEC opener. If they win that one, it's Kent State, and then the Sooners could be 5-0 heading into the Red River rivalry game against Texas. Don't want to put the cart before the horse. Got plenty to take care of before then, but John Mateer has been very impressive so far. How about Beau Pribula? After falling behind at Kansas 21-6, the Missouri Tigers, led by Pribula, went on to beat their border war rival 42-31. As the Mizzou quarterback, Pribula was 30 of 39 for 334 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. And through 2 games, as Mizzou's new starting quarterback, Pribula has 5 touchdown passes, no picks. He has been excellent so far for Eli Drinkwitz. They will get one more tune-up this week against Louisiana Lafayette before South Carolina comes to Como. Also, a shout-out here to Mizzou's run game. Ahmad Hardy with 112 on the ground, Jamal Roberts with 143. Great showing for both those guys, and the run game for Mizzou, which is always very good under Eli Drinkwitz. Another winner of the weekend, how about Mississippi State wide receiver Brenen Thompson? Led the Bulldogs with 6 catches for 133 yards and 2 scores, including the go-ahead touchdown late in this one, a 58-yard touchdown catch in the final minute to win it 24-20 over number 12 Arizona State. Thompson, who started his career at Texas, then spent the last 2 years at Oklahoma, he found a new home with Jeff Lebby in Starkville, and he delivered big on Saturday. Brenen Thompson coming up big. We had him on at SEC Media Days. He said, I'm here to make big plays, catch touchdowns, and certainly doing that so far for Mississippi State. Also, big shout out to Jeff Lebby and the Bulldog defense. Mississippi State had 6 tackles for a loss in the win, 2 sacks, 2 picks, and they have already shown massive improvements in their first 2 games of this season after a historically awful 2024. The Bulldogs get a few more tune-ups with Alcorn State and Northern Illinois before Tennessee comes to town on September 27th. They should be 4-0 going into that one. I say should, but Mississippi State, can you imagine if they get to 4 wins? Then you're looking at you need to pull off 2 upsets in the SEC to get to 6 wins and go bowling. Another winner of the weekend, how about Vanderbilt defense? I need to give some love to Diego Pavia, of course, and the Vandy offensive weapons, but to me, the winner of the weekend in that game was Vanderbilt's defense. They trailed Virginia Tech 20-10 at halftime, but the defense came out and pitched a shutout of the Hokies in the second half in their house. Linebacker Jalen Ruth recovered a fumble. They recorded 3 sacks, one for Nick Rinaldi, C.J. Hurd, Corday Sidner, and then Vandy's defense just flying around. A monster test coming up this week on the road at South Carolina against Lenore Sellers, and a South Carolina offense that didn't look great this past week against South Carolina State. So Vanderbilt defense looking very good so far. Another win of the weekend. How about Ty Simpson? I thought Ty was light years better this week as he was a perfect 17 for 17 for 226 yards and 3 touchdown passes as Bama steamrolled Louisiana Monroe 73-0 to get their first win of the season. Simpson completed a school record 17 consecutive passes. Look, Ty took a lot of heat after Bama dropped their opener at Florida State, but he was surgical in this one, connecting with their go-to target, Jeremy Bernard, who has also been awesome this season. And the Crimson Tide, they scored on each of their 11 possessions, 10 touchdowns and a field goal, and they held ULM to 148 total yards. Kalen DeBoer saying he wanted his team to cut it loose amid all that mounting pressure following last week's loss, and they did just that. Dominant performance. And while we will preface it was ULM, this is what this Bama team was supposed to look like preseason. Now, they will get a decent Wisconsin team this Saturday in Tuscaloosa. Nice little test with a better talent to test yourself with before they get a bye week. And then there's that big road trip to Georgia on September 27th. Bama's still got some getting right before they can go out on the road and beat a good Georgia team. All right, how about another win of the weekend? We'll put Arch Manning in here. Texas, as predicted, looked much better offensively at home, taking on San Jose State. Arch threw for 295, 4 touchdown passes. Also rushed for another score as Texas beat the Spartans 38-7. But Manning connecting with his new weapons, Parker Livingston, Jack Endries, each of them had 2 touchdowns apiece. Arch Manning, he will now get UTEP and Sam Houston these next 2 weeks to pad some more stats, get more comfortable before they have to go on the road in SEC play. And by the way, in 3 weeks, they are at Florida. Suddenly that game doesn't look as scary anymore with the way Florida looked this past week. Another winner of the weekend, Kewan Lacey, running back for Ole Miss, ran for 138 yards and a touchdown, and Ole Miss's 30-23 road win at Kentucky on Saturday as the Rebs start 1-0 in SEC play. Lacey's a Mizzou transfer. He has rushed for over 100 yards in both games so far this season. Run game, it was an inconsistent piece, I thought, for Ole Miss last season. They were looking for that bell cow back, never really got it, and if Lacey can consistently give them that this year, Ole Miss is going to win a lot of games. Also have to give a little winner award to Kentucky safety Ty Bryant, who had not one but 2 interceptions off Austin Simmons. He's a junior, recorded 3 interceptions in the past 2 seasons total. He had 1 pickoff in 12 games last year, 2 this week against Ole Miss. So shout out to Ty Bryant. Another winner of the weekend, the Tennessee offense. The Vols, they beat up East Tennessee State 72-17. They rushed for 276 as a team, and Joey Aguilar with another strong day at the office, throwing for 288 and 2 touchdowns. But Tennessee's offense currently ranks second in all of college football at just over 605 yards per game. They are just behind USC. The task gets tougher for Josh Heupel's bunch with the top 10 Georgia Bulldogs coming to town this Saturday. Another win of the weekend, I'm putting the whole Texas A&M wide receiver core here. Mario Craver had 114 yards on the score. Casey Concepcion had 73 yards and 2 touchdowns. Terry Bussey had a score. And A&M beat Utah State 44-22. But Marcel Reed, he is really enjoying connecting with these new pass catchers who have been outstanding through the first 2 weeks. And the Aggies, they're showing they aren't just a run-heavy team like I think we all expected. They can throw it around the yard. And Mike Elko has been showcasing it all as they get ready for a monster road trip this weekend to South Bend to take on Notre Dame. They will come home for Auburn next week. But A&M this week, true test to see how good the Aggies really are right now in 2025 going up to Notre Dame. Another winner of the weekend, Jackson Arnold. We said Auburn would get the passing game going at home, taking on lowly Ball State, and they did. Jackson Arnold going 24 for 28 for 251 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks, connected with Eric Singleton on 2 touchdowns, Horatio Fields for another, and Cam Coleman is the leading receiver, 7 catches for 77 yards. Jackson Arnold's playing well so far for Hugh Freeze. They get one more tune-up game this week against South Alabama, and then they will head to Norman for a gigantic SEC matchup next week. But Jackson Arnold, so far, so good. Taylon Green, another winner of the weekend over at Arkansas as they beat up, I get it, on Alabama A&M and Arkansas State in their first 2 home games. But Taylon Green, he's padding the stat sheet. He threw for 6 touchdown passes in week 1. This week, he threw for 4 touchdowns, rushed for another to go with 151 rushing yards. Taylon Green thriving in year 2 in this Bobby Petrino offense, but will it thrive when the opponents get tougher? Green's first big test is this weekend at Ole Miss, but he's been great so far. Leads all SEC quarterbacks with 10 total touchdown passes so far, Taylon Green. Another win of the weekend, I'm going to give it to the Georgia defense, the top 10 Georgia Bulldogs. They played Marshall and Austin Peay so far this season, but their defense has been stout. This week, they held Austin Peay under 200 yards total offense. C.J. Allen and Chris Cole each had a sack. Ellis Robinson had an interception. We will see what Kirby Smart's bunch looks like in Knoxville this weekend, taking on a Heupel offense. And our last winner of the weekend, how about Vakari Swain? If you don't know the name, get to know it. Seems like soon teams are going to stop punting the ball to South Carolina as Gamecocks return man Vakari Swain returned not one, but 2 punts for touchdowns this week as South Carolina beat South Carolina State 38-10. Gamecocks scored more from their special teams and defense than their offense this week. They were trailing 3-0 before Swain eluded a tackler right on top of him and then took it 64 yards to the house. His second touchdown was a 42-yard return after he picked up a partially blocked punt before it stopped rolling. Swain said South Carolina special teams noticed Wofford blocked a punt and returned a kickoff for a touchdown in their opening game loss. He said, look, if Wofford was going to be able to return one, I should be able to too. And I ran with that. With his 80-yard punt return touchdown at last week's opener against Virginia Tech, Vakari Swain has tied South Carolina's school's single-season record. The sophomore defensive back is the first FBS player with 2 punt return scores in a game since Daquan Hardy did it for Penn State against UMass in October of 2023. So shout out to all our winners from SEC Week 2. Well-deserved, well-earned. And look, we're only getting started here in the SEC season. There's plenty more to go. All right, when we return, we're going to get to our losers of the weekend. Thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Hey, look, guys, when the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today, and you can see parts on your doorstep tomorrow with over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. And if you need parts for a fast project, Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. Their part finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs where every detail matters. And you can join their free Trade Master program today and score some serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Just visit supplyhouse.com. Sign up for free. Use our promo code SHCollege5. It's going to get you 5% off your first order. That is supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Also, this episode brought to you by our friends at the Game Time app. College football is back, and let's be real, getting actual tickets, you feel like more of a battle than a game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices climbing at checkout. That's why you have to use the Game Time app. It is the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. You pull up the Game Time app. In just a couple taps, you're going to see some amazing deals. You're going to love the zone deals. You pick the section, Game Time will pick the seats, and you will save big. Honestly, it's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way you're going to buy tickets. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Just download the Game Time app, create an account. If you've never used them before, use our code LOCKEDONCollege. That'll get you $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that is promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. It is swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. All right, roll along here, Locked On SEC, part of Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. We gave you the winners of the weekend in week 1. How about the losers of the weekend? And we got to go out to Gainesville. As Billy Napier, just one of those inexcusable losses. Billy Napier has had a few of those in his tenure there in the swamp. In his first year, he lost to Kentucky at home, lost at Vanderbilt, who was really bad that year, got crushed by Oregon State in the Las Vegas Bowl. I get it. They had opt-outs in that one. But then 23, loses to Kentucky again, gets blown out at Utah, loses in overtime to Arkansas. Last year, they opened the season getting blown out by Miami at home. And look, despite the 4-game win streak down the stretch of last year with DJ Lagway taking over at quarterback, this loss is just inexcusable. Yes, South Florida appears to be a pretty good team, but you were the Florida Gators. You were at home in the swamp. You have to win that game. Win it ugly. I don't care. Just win. Florida committed 11 penalties for over 100 yards, including 2 major infractions on the final drive. Questionable game management down the stretch. Billy Napier saying after the 18-16 loss, there's no excuse here. I'm not up here to make excuses. Napier called 2 pass plays in the waning minutes when his offense needed to milk the clock. Gators gave up a 66-yard touchdown pass because defenders were staring at the sideline. They weren't ready to go. And Billy Napier drops to 20-20 overall, including 14-7 at home. He is 1-1 for the 1-1 for the 4th consecutive season to start the year at Florida. And they got some big issues. DJ Lagway obviously looked rusty. Our offensive line allowed too much pressure, failed to create enough holes against USF. Another loser of the weekend. I'm sorry to do it to him. I got to put him in here. Defensive lineman Brendan Bett, who was flagged and ejected on the final drive for spitting at an opponent. One play after Dijon Johnson was called for pass interference. Bett transferred to Florida after 2 years at Baylor, was flagged for unsportsmanlike conduct, was kicked out of the game, escorted to the locker room after spitting in the face mask of Bulls offensive lineman Cole Skinner. It was one of 2 penalties assessed against the Gators on that final 87-yard drive that set up Nico Grammatica's 20-yard field goal on the final play for USF. Billy Napier said, we'll take a good look at it, but it's unacceptable. I think we got a lot of players in that room as well that have the same belief that that is unacceptable. When a guy does something like that, he's compromising the team. He's putting himself before the team. Everything the game is about, you're compromising. So there will be lessons to be learned there. Yeah, it is that simple. Of course, Brendan Bett spitting, that comes just 2 days after Philadelphia Eagles defensive tackle Jalen Carter, former Georgia Bulldog. He was ejected for spitting on Dak Prescott in the NFL opener. Then apparently a week ago in Seattle in the League's Cup soccer final, Miami star Luis Suarez spit at a staff member. So the even crazier part is Bett isn't even the first player under Napier to be ejected for spitting at an opponent during a game. Defensive lineman Jamari Lyons, he was tossed for spitting at a Florida State player late in the first half of Florida's home loss to Florida State back in 2023. So you got to get it right. And Billy Napier, man, it is just, this thing is going sideways. He has got to get it back on track. But next up, I mean, it's a road trip to Death Valley to take on top 5 LSU this Saturday. Doesn't get much easier, but if they can find a way to win that one, man, you'll get some kind of confidence back from the fan base, certainly. How about another loser of the weekend? I'm putting LSU's ground game here. I don't know how many people watched LSU play Louisiana Tech, but Tigers struggled to run the football all night against Louisiana Tech. 34 carries for 128 yards. That's 3.8 yards per carry. But Harlem Berry had a 43-yard run, and Xavier Thomas had a 48-yard run. That is, if you take those 2 out, that is 32 carries for 37 net yards rushing. I mean, basically just over a yard a carry. That is ridiculous against a team like Louisiana Tech. Now, LSU lost their starting center, Braylon Moore, on basically the first play of the game. And then later in the game, lost their stud tight end, Trades Green. Now, medical results were positive for both guys. They're not expected to be out for the season, expected to return at some point. But according to reports, I would not expect either guy to play this weekend against Florida. I know they're saying Braylon Moore is questionable. Trades Green is going to be out. He's going to miss some time. But look, LSU was a 36.5-point favorite, and they won this game 23-7. Obviously a letdown game after the big win against Clemson in week 1. But LSU going to have to clean up a ton of things if they're going to remain a top 5 team these next couple weeks. Another loser of the weekend. This is going to sound weird because Ole Miss won the football game 30-23, but I'm putting Austin Simmons in here. Threw 2 interceptions, completed just 13 of his 24 passes for 235 yards, no touchdown passes. Did have a rushing score, but the sophomore quarterback, he's going to have to improve his play in SEC games. Ole Miss is going to get to where they want to go. Remember, he had the 2 picks in week 1, so Austin Simmons now leads the conference with 4 interceptions thrown through just 2 games. Next up for Ole Miss, a home game against a pretty good Arkansas squad. Big test for them this week. Another loser of the weekend, I'm putting Mark Stoops and Kentucky. You got to give the Wildcats credit. They battled, only lost by 7 to Ole Miss. But the Wildcats have managed just 659 total yards of offense in the first 2 games. By comparison, Tennessee's averaging 600 yards of offense per game. Kentucky has that total through 2 games. Kentucky had just one offensive penalty in the season opening win over Toledo. They were flagged 6 times for 50 yards this past week. Remember, they were the home team against Ole Miss. And despite the struggles, Stoops says he liked the effort from his team, but this thing could go sideways very quickly with the big, tough opponents that are coming up for Kentucky. So give them credit, but they got to get the quarterback thing figured out. Calzada was just okay. They got to get some better production from the quarterback spot as the season rolls along. And our last loser of the weekend, again, this is getting a little nitpicky here, but I'm going with the Texas A&M defense. Not a super cause for alarm, but we are used to a Mike Elko defense swarming and making things very difficult on their opponents. Through 2 weeks, Aggies give up 24 points to UTSA and then 22 points to Utah State this past weekend. Not the end of the world, but they do rank dead last in the SEC in points allowed per game at 23, tied with Kentucky at the bottom of the SECs. By comparison, Georgia, they're number one, allowing just 6.5 points per game, followed by Oklahoma at 8 and LSU third at 8.5. So again, look, was it garbage time touchdowns, whatever? I'm giving A&M the benefit of the doubt, but obviously you want to play some much better defense going up to South Bend playing Notre Dame this weekend. By the way, Alabama has the 8th toughest remaining strength of schedule according to ESPN FPI. I saw that on there. Florida has the toughest. Arkansas number 2, Oklahoma number 3. So when you play in the SEC, there is no, gimme week. It's tough no matter what. Still more to come here on Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. We'll touch on the latest polls, where the SEC teams rank in the polls. We will do that coming up in just a second. Hey, a quick question for all you college football fans out there. If you go back in time and sit front row at your school's biggest rivalry game, what hat would you be wearing? Yes, we're talking hats. For us, it would be from the game. These aren't just hats. They're the same vintage styles worn back in the 80s and 90s. And guess what? They still go for the same price they did back then. When you use code LOCKEDON, you will get your vintage hat for $16.99. Just head to thegamecaps.com, THE gamecaps.com. Grab your team's classic bar or retro circle design. Use our code LOCKEDON for an exclusive discount because legends wear the game. See them back here, Alabama, LSU, Texas. We've got some in our shot, thegamecaps.com. All right, final segment here on Locked On SEC. And we just need to touch on very quickly the latest SEC teams in the polls. There was some movement in the polls, not a ton. But let's check in on the coaches poll first. They've got Georgia number 3, LSU number 4. So they very high on both Georgia and LSU, still top 4 teams. Texas comes in at number 7. They dropped Texas from 6 to 7. In these rankings. South Carolina holding firm in the coaches poll in the top 10 at number 10. Ole Miss is number 13. Tennessee, number 15. Tennessee moved up 2 spots. I guess they were impressed with their win over Eastern Tennessee High School, whatever that was. Oklahoma up to 16. So again, Oklahoma gets a big win over a top 15 Michigan team, but only moves up to 16. Texas A&M comes in at 17 and Alabama at 18. So that's what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 teams in the coaches poll coming out of week 2 into week 3. How about the AP poll? They have LSU a little bit higher. They have LSU sitting at number 3 in their poll. They knocked Georgia down. For some reason, the AP poll dropped Georgia 2 spots. Now Oregon blew out Oklahoma State, so they gave Oregon some love, bumping them up to 4. But Georgia slides down to 6. Didn't really do anything. I mean, they just haven't played a competitive opponent yet. So when they do, for instance, when they play Alabama in a couple of weeks, if they beat Alabama, then Georgia will move up. Texas at number 7. So again, Texas getting a ton of credit for the close loss to Ohio State week 1. South Carolina at number 11. So Gamecocks outside the top 10 in the AP poll. Oklahoma up to 13 in the AP poll. So they're getting a lot more love for the win over Michigan. Tennessee up 7 spots in the AP poll. So again, they were just very impressed with Tennessee through these first 2 weeks. Good win over Syracuse week 1, but Tennessee up 7 spots to number 15 in the AP poll. Texas A&M, they moved up 3 spots with their win over Utah State. They're up to 16th. Ole Miss at 17, Alabama at 19. Auburn makes an appearance in the AP poll at number 24, and Missouri gets in there finally. Missouri should have been in preseason. They weren't, but Missouri in there number 25 now. So the AP poll's got 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Is that right? 11 SEC teams, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yep. So 11 SEC teams in the Associated Press poll heading into week 3. Very impressive stuff. And of course, we get some good SEC matchups this week with conference play really getting going. Of course, we get Arkansas at Ole Miss. We get Florida at LSU. We get Tennessee playing Georgia. And then we get Vanderbilt at South Carolina. So some good, big SEC matchups coming up this weekend. And look, it's going to be a lot of fun watching all the action and really trying to figure out who's good, who's not, who was maybe lackluster performances last week just because they weren't really being tested. And really, I'm talking about LSU and Georgia, right? They're the two teams that are sitting at the top in the polls, sitting in top 4 in the poll. Just need to see more dominance from those two teams. I mean, they're playing Austin Peay and Louisiana Tech, so I get it. It's a little bit, hard to get up for those games. But nonetheless, the games coming up for both of them this weekend could really solidify LSU and Georgia as locks as top 4 teams with big wins this weekend. All right, thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. I want to remind you that Locked On and Fire TV present the college football kickoff preview with Gary Patterson and Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12. College football preview, only Locked On could do. Catch college football kickoff every Thursday throughout the season, only on Fire TV. I'm Chris Gordy. It's been Locked On SEC. Talk to you guys tomorrow.